So our next reader is Clarissa León. She is a native of Reno, Nevada, and she's pursuing her master's. We can give a shout out to Reno. And she is pursuing her master's of fine arts in nonfiction at the University of Pittsburgh. She enjoys drinking coffee and tea, and in lieu of getting to know you better through her bio, she invites you to have a cup of tea with her. And the song that was the walk-in is from Juanes, an artist that she really loves. Tom, that's your cue. She appreciates a good laugh. This was very effective.
Great music! We love the music! Woo! Wow. Stunning. Woo! Woo!
Okay. Thank you, Angela. So I am a lot of it. No, I'm just getting up from a flu thing. So
Talk about it.
I got that.
Tell us
So
more.
we're gonna talk about that. So my voice is nice and sexy as well. Okay. What I'm going to read tonight is actually something that I wrote in my memory and migration class with Elizabeth Rodriguez Fielder, and it's a little bit. It's not super narrative, but well, we'll see how you like it. I don't know. And apologies again for nonfiction people here. You always hear this story, and I hate it. Everybody knows everybody's working. A few months ago, on an October afternoon, I drove to a hilltop in the river town of Millvale, Pennsylvania, with my classmate Anna Weber. We met with another group of graduate students to tour murals painted over and above the walls of St. Nicholas's Croatian Catholic Church. 76 years ago, Croatian artist and muralist Max Slovenka feverishly completed the church's 25 murals in the span of 8 weeks. We were enveloped from murals of dark blood reds and olive greens, fiery oranges, and saintly glowing yellows. The guide shuffled us along from wall to wall as we continually craned our necks above us and to the left and right. As we walked or sometimes sat in the pews, we came across 2 murals of women in the act of mourning. The women were hunched and crying with appropriate Croatian dress and expression, eyes of pain, tight lips, truly anguished. Around them were few, if any, men, and in fact, simply more women with the same mournful expression, the same painful hunch. Their eyes expressed a sorrow that became an unwanted memory, tugging at my coat. 2 murals, Croatian mother raises her son for war, and immigrant mother gives her son for American industry, caught my attention for expressing a resolute fact of death. And while being present with all the murals gave us time to reflect on the inescapable human emotions of fear and penance, I was drawn to these 2 murals for expressing how grieving falls heavy on the shoulders of women. In The Immigrant Mother Raises Her Son for Industry, 9 women are dressed in floor-length black dresses and crowded around a shirtless man, dead, lying on a spread of newspapers. One woman in the center covers her face as she lifts one hand out and attempts to shield her eyes from the tragedy before her. The others look to the sky, clasp their hands in prayer, and hold each other in consolation. The mural depicts a mining accident in the Johnston area where a family lost 4 sons. In Croatian Mother Raises Her Son for War, we see a similar architecture of women. This time, the women are dressed in traditional Croatian white mourning dresses with blue ribbons at the waist. A man in army uniform lay in a coffin, his hand placed across his waist as a bloodied bandage wraps his head. In the background, you see the mesmerizing scene of row after row of white crosses, a veteran cemetery with hundreds already dead. In both scenes, we see men, off at a distance, nearly cold to the tragedy before the huddle of women. The women, it seems, obligate themselves to this procession, to mourn their loved ones, and when they do not mourn, where do they and we go? I thought I had seen these images before, and of course I had in my many years of attending Catholic Mass, and seeing there at the altar the Virgin Mary herself mourning and cradling the death of her son, Jesus Christ. The Pieta sculpture by Michelangelo has been reproduced from a number of other artists, and remained ever present in my mind as I came to see Lenka's murals of women in mourning. For here we see who takes care of the dead and their mournings, the mothers, the daughters, the sisters, the wives. It is not that men do not mourn. Instead, the mourning defines womanhood and motherhood, and the trauma of migrating that pain has become an obligation of women to bear witness, to testify, and to document the death of our loved ones. As Lenka saw it, mothers must hold on to these traumas, and by doing so, continue the lineage of being a responsible and appropriate griever. Or so I think. As a woman, I question why we are the ones who mourn. This thought tugged me into unwanted territory again, as both a woman and a Latina who has seen mourning on the faces of women more often than men. The burden of grieving raises an ever-present question on the gender balance in grieving, in that there is a need, a must, from women to give themselves up for those that have died. These traditions, unfortunately, carry with them a dual purpose in that not only must women grieve, but they must pass on grief to their daughters. The trauma of grieving carries its own dilemmas as well. The pressure to identify with loss constantly pushes you to confront the significance of life and a woman's peripheral role in it. I thought about this as nearly 2 years ago my uncle died while I visited his family in Colombia. I had suddenly and shockingly been thrust into a funeral for what was supposed to be a family reunion. That Saturday morning in February 2016, my sister and I kept my aunt Luce close as we made our way to her husband's funeral. One aunt led our family into praying the rosary, and as she moved her hands against the beads, I saw from the corner of my eye another aunt holding on to Luce's, caressing her arm as she nodded and dabbed her swollen eyes. When it came time for the interment, my uncle's wife, Cristina, came to my sister and gave us a small bouquet of pink roses. Hay 6 rosas, una para cada uno de ustedes. She placed the pink roses in my uncle's coffin while she looked back to us. There were 6 roses for each one in my family. It felt strange that she, not my aunt's own brother, came to us with the roses. It felt stranger that my sister and I had come during a time of necessity, as though we, as women, could inherently and instinctively comfort my aunt in ways that unearthed empathy and embedded cultural customs all at once. Our Aunt Luce's own daughter had died many years earlier, and now, left with only a son, she turned to us. Like the woman in Lenka's murals, we surrounded her husband in his coffin. We all together turned our own hands and shielded our faces away from his death. We cried and swallowed our tears. We felt true anguish, yet somehow understood we needed to feel our aunt's pain. We needed to see how his death emanated through her body. We ended the day back at our aunt's apartment and immediately felt called into being there any way we could, in ways that were entirely unlike the woman in Martha's murals. Death and the procession and grieving, it seemed, were as necessary to pass on in Colombian culture as were the necessity of extolling the virtues of a clean house. This, after all, is what makes you proceed through the gates of our Father, Padre Nuestro, acting like his mother, grieving for all our lost sons and daughters. Lenka's murals have been exchanging these images for visitors for decades now, and through his work, I could see even more question and memories being unearthed. When visiting the murals, these questions of mourning were reprised in slow-moving memories of my uncle's death. The responsibility of mourning may be a fastidious practice, but by visiting his murals, I had unearthed an understanding about mourning, but also about place and performance. We as women have performed from the moment of birth, it seems, until the moment of death. And like Lenka's murals and La Pieta, these images reinforce women as the true empathizers. We can pass mourning on to men, but these rituals survive and exist through centuries of devoted women assimilating themselves to be docile, gentle, and reflective. In so many ways, women are opposed to becoming mourners, grievers. There is but one gift. The solace is perhaps knowing the act of reverence is passed on for when they die. Still, the choice feels constrained. The grief truly doesn't pass, and the trauma of death is never completely interred. Although the responsibility of mourning does not come without hurt or guilt for women, as in this unspoken obligation, I know there is gratitude for seeing and feeling what cannot be seen or felt beyond the church, beyond its walls, beyond this world. Expressing sorrow will always be illuminating. We led Monica's murals, and I said a prayer for my uncle and all of my loved ones who had passed. I thought about my aunt and what would happen when she died. I had already thought about this in Columbia, and I thought about it again in Millville. How would I say goodbye, not just to her, but to my own mother and father? What words would I say? What would it make me like? I thought about this before I stopped myself. I reminded myself, for now, I would just close my eyes, send a prayer to them, and just let us be.